Everyone, and welcome. Today, we're diving into something that's at the absolute core of every single product that moves through an SAP system: units of measurement. Now, I know, it sounds pretty basic, right? But trust me, getting this right is non-negotiable. So let's break down how SAP builds this universal language for logistics. But seriously, just think about it for a second. Your company might be buying raw materials by the ton, packaging them up in individual boxes, and then selling a liquid version by the milliliter. So how on earth does one system keep track of all of that without just total chaos? Well, the answer is all in the configuration, specifically in how it handles units of measurement. So here's what we're going to cover. First, we'll talk about why this is literally the language of logistics. Then we'll get into the science behind it all, dimensions and SI units. After that, we'll jump into the actual SAP configuration, see these units in action in the real world, and then we'll wrap up with a really critical financial setting: quantity versus value commitments. Okay, first up, the language of logistics. And this is so much more than just sticking kg or lb next to a number on a screen. This is about building a rock-solid, universal language that your entire global operation can understand and, more importantly, trust. You know, this foundation shows up everywhere. We're talking about the numbers you see on your screen, those automatic conversions from, say, kilograms to grams, and the specific quantities you put in a purchase order that's going to a supplier halfway across the globe. It all starts right here. All right, next, let's get into the building blocks. We're moving from the why to the how, the scientific principles that actually make this whole thing work. See, SAP didn't just invent this system out of thin air. It's built on a global standard that's recognized everywhere. And that standard is the International System of Units. You'll probably see it called SI. At its very core, this huge system has just 7 base units. Things like the meter for length, the kilogram for mass. Believe it or not, every single other unit of measurement you can think of is derived from these fundamental 7. Now, to keep all of these units organized, SAP uses this concept called a dimension. And honestly, this is kind of the secret sauce that makes the system so smart. A dimension isn't a unit itself. It's more like a category for units that all measure the same thing. So the dimension length is the home for meters and inches and feet. This is the logic that stops you from accidentally trying to convert kilograms into miles. The system just knows they belong to different, totally incompatible dimensions. Here's a really easy way to picture it. Think of a dimension like a folder on your computer named volume, right? All the different ways you can measure volume, liters, gallons, cubic meters. They're just like the individual files you'd stick inside that folder. It's a super simple but powerful way to group related ideas together. And this is how it all ties back to those 7 base units we mentioned. The dimension for volume, for example, isn't a base unit itself. Nope, it's derived by multiplying the base unit for length, which is the meter, 3 times over. And that's exactly why the core SI unit for volume inside the system is the cubic meter. And that, by the way, is a setting you absolutely cannot change. It's fundamental. Okay, so that's enough of the theory. Let's get our hands dirty and talk about how this is actually set up and managed inside SAP S4HANA. This is where we bring the system to life. One of the most powerful things about this is that it's all managed in one central place. You define kg for kilogram one time, and that single definition is used consistently across purchasing, inventory, sales, you name it. This is huge because it just wipes out errors and makes sure everyone, everywhere, is speaking the exact same language. Now, I have to give you a really, really important warning here, and this comes straight from SAP's own documentation. The system ships with a whole bunch of standard units, and you must not, I repeat, must not change their internal keys, ever. If you do, you could cause massive system-wide inconsistencies and errors you can't even predict. You can always create your own custom units, that's fine, but you have to leave the standard ones alone. So when you're defining a unit, you're going to see 2 different keys. First is the commercial key. That's the short 3-character code you see on screens and on printouts, like PCE for piece. Then you have the technical key. It's a bit longer, up to 6 characters, and the system uses it for all its internal processing. And what's cool is they're both language dependent, which means you can have different display text for different languages. So all this setup, all this theory, where does it actually pay off? Let's take a look at a few places in the day-to-day logistics cycle where these carefully configured units make a real, direct impact. Honestly, you're going to see them everywhere. The order unit, for instance, is what you buy from your supplier. Maybe you buy by the PAL for pallet. But the purchase order price unit could be totally different. You might be priced per kg, even if you're buying a whole pallet. Then, of course, there's the unit of issue for when you use it internally, and the sales unit for what you sell to your customers. All of these can be different, and SAP handles all those conversions behind the scenes just seamlessly. All right, and for our last section, we're zeroing in on one tiny little checkbox in the unit of measure configuration that has a surprisingly huge impact on your company's financial commitments and reporting. It's a big one. So here's the question this checkbox answers. When you create a purchase order, does the system set aside funds based on the quantity you ordered, or is it based on the actual dollar value of that order? That entire decision comes down to this one little setting, the value-based commitment checkbox. Let's break this table down because it's important. So if that box is unchecked, everything is quantity-based. The commitment against your budget is only cleared when the full quantity is delivered, period. Any price differences on the final invoice, they don't matter for clearing that commitment. But if you check that box, it all becomes value-based. Now the commitment is based on the order value, and it gets cleared automatically when you do evaluated goods receipt. And in this world, price differences absolutely matter. If the invoice comes in for less than the PO, you might actually have to go in and clear that leftover commitment manually. So why should you care about this? Well, because picking the wrong setting here can lead to what I call zombie commitments, just sitting open in your financial system forever. And that leads to totally inaccurate budget and availability reporting. It's a perfect example of how one tiny technical setting can have major financial consequences down the line. All right, let's boil this all down. Key takeaways. Units of measurement are the centrally managed SI-based language of your entire supply chain. Dimensions are like the folders that group these units together and keep your mouth logical. And remember that golden rule. Never, ever change the standard SAP keys. And finally, that little checkbox for value-based commitments, it fundamentally changes how your financial tracking works. And that kind of leaves us with one final thought, right? We just saw how deep the logic behind something as simple as a unit of measure can be, and the massive implications it has. It really makes you wonder, what other seemingly simple settings are out there quietly running your entire business from behind the scenes? Thanks so much. Hey everyone,